This right here is a new Nikon 17-28. It's one of Nikon's budget f2.8s, but it's a wide angle, so this is a lens I was particularly excited for landscape photography. So let's jump right in and do my first impressions of this lens. What's up, y'all? It's a Project Photography back with another video, and today we're going to be doing a first look and first impressions of the Nikon 17-28 f2.8 for the Z mount. And this is a lens that I was extremely excited for when it was first announced by Nikon. I was mainly thinking of it as something that I can use for astrophotography because it has an f2.8 aperture and a wide angle lens. And the only other lens that has those characteristics is the Nikon 14-24 f2.8. That's easily $1,000 more than this lens. And you might be asking yourself, you know, I have a 14-30 f4, and a lot of you guys have seen that. So why on earth would I be getting something like this to even replace my 14-30? And the answer to that is no, I'm not going to be replacing my 14-30 with this lens. It's been working alongside that lens for astrophotography, for things like events and other things you would need an f2.8 wide angle for, as well as for video. And those are a few things I'll be using it for. And a big reason why I picked this up over something like a 14-24 f2.8 is mainly size and weight, as well as the price. I mean, this is $1,000 less, and that's huge for me. And the fact that this is so small, I can just throw it in my bag and not really worry about it. So we really need to talk about what I am looking for in this lens. A few things I'm looking out for is, first of all, optical quality, because I have the 14-30 f4, and that is an S-line lens. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a top of the line Nikon lens. This doesn't have that moniker. So I want to see what the difference is in terms of optical quality. You know, we're going to talk about things like sharpness and vignetting, as well as how that f2.8 wide open is going to look on this lens, because I mean that's going to be really important when you're buying a wide angle lens like this at 2.8. The other thing I'm going to be looking out for is ergonomics, right? So how does this lens hold up in the long run? Is it durable? Is it something that I can rely on? And a big reason why I asked that is because it has a very plastic chassis, and even just using it for the past maybe few days, I can see that there are some scratch marks and it scratches very easily. So we're going to see how that holds up. But as you guys know, in these videos, when I like to do first impressions, I like to actually show you what I'm shooting, how I'm shooting it, and what the actual photos look like from this lens firsthand. I haven't actually done a shoot with this lens. I've mainly just been doing test photos and so forth. So this next shoot is gonna be a real first impressions of me actually using this lens. So you guys get to see firsthand what that looks like. But I'm not actually gonna be shooting here. What we're doing is tomorrow morning, I'm gonna go to Palos Verdes, place that I shot at before at sunset, but this time at sunrise. So we're gonna capture some amazing sunrise photos, and I'm extremely excited about that. So anyways, guys, with that being said, let's jump right into the video and get some amazing landscape photography. Good morning, everyone. It is very early right now. I got here at around 5:30, and I've kind of just been waiting to see what the sun and the light is gonna look like. It is very cold, and I'm very excited to actually shoot some photos today. We're here early in the morning at Palos Verdes, place that I've shot at before, but this time we're gonna be doing a sunrise shoot. Very excited for it, and we're gonna be using the 17-28 f2.8 to test it out, get some images, and hopefully come back with some great photos. And this is gonna be a true first impressions of this lens, so I gotta get a first shoot in. So anyways, guys, I'm not gonna be shooting B-roll because it's very dark. I mean, look at this without it. I mean, you literally can't see anything. So we're just gonna go right into do some POV photography. So I'm put you guys on my GoPro, get some first person point of view images, and yeah, let's jump right in. All right, y'all, so we're now behind the camera, behind the scenes, and we're gonna be walking through. I'm giving you my reasoning and just thoughts while I'm shooting these images. Now, as you can see, it is very dark out. We are talking about around 6 o'clock, give or take, and it's really interesting to see how the photos actually come up in the camera. But right now, what I'm trying to do is capture a lot of this landscape down here at the bottom and utilize the sky up top to create a really interesting composition where it's kind of like almost like a foreground image, right? So something like this is what I come out with, and I really like this idea where we have not really a true subject matter in the background per se, but that foreground is our subject matter, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So I go ahead and capture the image right here, and I really like this composition a lot, and edited it looks even better. It's crazy because it doesn't even look like it's the time of day that it is, and the lighting is much different. But I really like this image a lot. I think the foreground and the landscape itself is super interesting. So yeah, let's keep on moving on here. So what I'm going to do right here is pick up, because I'm in a very treacherous spot. So I moved to try and capture more of the general cliffside that you see here, this entire shoreline right here that I want to grab. And this is where the 17mm focal length, I think, really comes into play, right? So we're not able to get a 14mm wide angle, super wide angle field of view. So it's a little bit, zoomed in, and this something I had to work with for sure. So I'm shooting this at about a 30-second long exposure, and you can see that there. And what I'm trying to do was smoothen out a lot of the water, create some movement in the sky. And I decided to get a little bit higher of a vantage point because I just feel like I need a little bit more of a wide angle field. I want to get more in the frame, so that's why I move up there. So then we go ahead and capture the image right here. And then we go ahead and edit the photo. Now I really like this image a lot. I think it does a lot for the landscape. First of all, I love the curvature, how we have a lot of the elements right from the bottom right hand side, and it kind of curves up to the background subject matter, the cliff side in the back. And I think something I had an issue with this landscape before is that I felt like the landscapes were really uneven, where that background subject matter would be too much curving into the right hand side of the frame. I wasn't able to get a really even composition. So that's why I really like this image a lot. I honestly think a 14mm would have been really nice here, but shooting with a 17mm, we're able to get what we get. So I'll go ahead and move on here. Just a disclaimer, I'm not showing every single image that I've taken in this landscape, mainly because this is still a first impressions video. I want to take some time to talk about the lens itself. So I'm showing you the 5 best images that I really liked. And right here, what I really want to be doing is switching out my 6-stop ND filter for a 3-stop, because I want to get a nice 1 second to half a second long exposure to shoot these photos. So what I'm planning to do is utilize that rock in the middle of the frame in order to get a very minimalistic sort of image right here. And you can kind of see that I want that nice moving water in the foreground, nice isolated sky up top with a very minimalistic composition. But where I think a lot of the intrigue and the elements come into play is definitely that movement in the water. As you can see right there, I absolutely love this idea of the composition, and we go ahead and edit it. And I think this is a very good job at portraying the mood of the environment that I was in at the moment. And I really like the minimalism here. You don't need a lot of elements in the frames to do what you want to give off in terms of the landscape. You just have to have the right ones, and I think this is it right here. So we go ahead and pick up and move on here. That's probably my favorite image of this entire day, even including the images that I took that you're not even seeing, mainly because I just feel like it does such a good job at capturing the entire landscape. So right here, I'm doing something similar, getting that shorter exposure, and I really just want to capture a lot of the moving water landscape, let the landscape itself create the composition for me. And the reason why I like this area in particular is because you have those rocks on the right hand side. They're able to frame your landscape really nice. And along with the curvature of the cliffside in the background, it is able to have this contrast effect of the composition on the left and right hand side. And the movement of the water just adds another feel, a dynamic element to the image that I personally love. So let's go ahead and move on here. And where I'm picking up, I see this reflection in the water that I really like a lot. So what I'm going to try to do is throw my camera into vertical orientation so I can go ahead and capture that water in the foreground. I'm switching to something like either a 6 or a 10 stop, I believe. I think it's more of a 6 stop because I want to capture that really still water. We're going to need a 30-second long exposure for that. And on top of that, we're able to get some really nice movement in the clouds, something that I really enjoy in this image. And you can see edited, it looks absolutely gorgeous. And you see that really golden feel of the water at the bottom and the reflections is just absolutely stunning. I really like this composition a lot. I mean, that 30-second long exposure really did a lot of work. So I'm just gonna really be highlighting one image here that I really like, and I'm telling you guys, even though this is probably the most minimalistic composition I took of the day, this is definitely my most favorite image. The water movement, as well as the dynamic feel and the mood of the image, just really brings out a lot of feelings of, I don't want to say gloominess, but it's just a beautiful image. I really like this a lot. Sometimes the simplest photos are the best ones. So anyways, guys, let's get back to the video. Let me know what was your favorite photo down in the comment section down below. All right, y'all, so I just finished shooting the landscape images that I wanted using this lens. It was pretty mixed experience. Overall, I think it was positive, but there are definitely some things that I want to talk to you guys about back in the studio. So let's jump right in and I'll give you my first impressions of this lens. All right, now that we have gone out and shot the photos that we wanted to shoot, came back with some images, I have reviewed them, edited them, and so forth. And now I am ready to talk about my actual first impressions of this lens. So first of all, to begin with, let's talk about optics. The main thing that I really like about this lens is that when it produces images, there are very little vignetting. And this is something that's very important to me when I'm actually out there shooting landscape images, mainly because when you have vignetting in the image, that is something you have to really correct for in post, and it makes your process a lot slower if you have vignetting. That's definitely something that I've taken into account and that I'm generally happy about this lens. And I want to keep in mind that everything that I'm saying is still a first impressions. This isn't a final review by any means. I mean, I've only had one shoot with this lens, so I won't be able to have a full grasp as to how I feel about this lens and what I really think about it. But next up, let's talk about sharpness, because I think this is an area that I had some concerns with, mainly because this is a non-S-line lens and it's not supposed to perform like an S-line lens. So how does it perform when it comes to sharpness? First of all, when it came to the corners, I was a little let down because I feel like the corners performance of this lens wasn't as good as other lenses that I've tested. I feel like it definitely could have used some work. And I just feel like there is a drop off when it came to the corners, even when shooting at something like f8. And this is something I will need to test more when it comes to something like an f2.8 shot. Like how the corner is going to look when it comes to images like that. And that's going to be really important for astrophotography because you don't want stars in the corner smearing and so forth. But in the center of this lens, it's generally okay. I kind of am being a little bit harsh on this lens, mainly because I've tested some of Nikon's best lenses. So in comparison to those lenses, I don't think this lens is nearly as good when it comes optically. But in general, I do feel like the sharpness held up. I was able to come up with some great images, and I never felt like it was holding me back in the first place. And something else I really want to mention when it comes to optics is that shooting on a 17mm focal length for me was definitely a much different experience. I definitely felt like it was a little bit tighter than something like a 14mm. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought would be an issue, mainly because, I mean, a wide angle is a wide angle, right? You would think that, you know, what's the difference between 14mm and 16mm? And this is only one up from a 16mm lens. But for me, I definitely found that difference. And there's a lot of times where I was creating compositions and I found myself a little bit cramped. But with that being said about this lens, is the optics gonna hold you back from creating amazing images? And definitely not. You know, Nikon has gotten to the point where they've created a lot of lenses that you're able to shoot with and create amazing images with. And I feel like this lens is definitely one of those lenses. You have to remember the price point that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about an f2.8 lens for $1,200. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And you do get what you pay for, right? Like if you wanted to go and get the best image quality possible out of a lens, I mean, you're looking at things like the 14-30 and the 14-24. And for me personally, this isn't that sort of lens. But I think for majority of people, like honestly, like 95% of photographers, they're not gonna notice a difference and they're still gonna come out with amazing images. It's just for me, when it comes to my landscape photography, I'm extremely picky when it comes to image quality. So next, let's talk about the ergonomics, because this is something that I think is extremely important to talk about when considering this lens. First of all, I absolutely love the compact nature of this lens. It's so small, so tiny. And the 67mm filter thread is actually great, mainly because I can throw on a step-up ring like I have on right now and make an 82. Another thing that I really love about this lens is it has internal zoom. And for me, it isn't necessarily something that I think about when I'm going out and shooting. But now when I am using this lens, I really have enjoyed it. The ability to just zoom in and out without the elements at the front of the lens, like moving out in from the body, is absolutely fantastic. I feel like this does a better job at reducing the amount of dust that comes in. And when I'm shooting landscape photos in particular, I'm gonna be out there in the elements, and it is possible that things can get sucked into the lens if it has an external zoom. And I really enjoyed this a lot. I think it just made the experience of zooming a lot more, I don't want to say efficient, but it just made it a lot better. I really enjoyed it a lot. So one thing I definitely wish that was on this lens is an autofocus manual focus switch. This is something that isn't on the 24-200, but is on the 14-30. And for me personally, it is sort of an issue. I mean, I would love to just switch between autofocus and manual focus like that, but unfortunately I had to go into the settings, you have to change them. But for me, I set FN2, which is this function button right here, to, you know, autofocusing and manual focusing and the, you know, selection from that. And for me, it is a little bit more of just a hassle to get between autofocus and manual focus. And when I'm doing video in particular, that is something definitely that I noticed. And the next, I really want to talk about the control ring. For me personally, I didn't really feel the difference between this and a regular autofocus, manual focus, ring on here, but I actually do like the form factor of this ring relative to an autofocus, manual focus ring. Of course, honestly, you can program them to do the exact same thing. And this doesn't even have an AF/MF control ring, but this is what I programmed this ring for. So for me, I'm a little indifferent. It's cool, but it's not something I necessarily am looking out for in a lens like this. But next, the main thing that I really want to talk about is the fact that this lens's chassis actually scratches up quite a bit and quite frequently and a little easy. And this is something that I have a little concern over, because when I talk about durability of a lens, I don't necessarily have concern that it's gonna break over time. Of course, there are some lenses where I do have concern about that. And I don't think this is gonna be one of them. But the problem is that when you're using this over time, how is it gonna age in 1, 2, 5 years? Is it gonna look like the same lens as when you bought it? And now I beat the living crap out of my gear. I mean, I take it everywhere, I put it through its elements, I make sure I get the most out of my gear. And this might be a little concerning as, I'm gonna be shooting landscape images, and that is definitely a very demanding field when it comes to how your lenses hold up over time. So this is something I definitely be looking out for when I make my future full review of this lens. But overall, I am happy with this lens. I feel like I was pretty harsh on it optically, but I don't think this is gonna hold you back from creating good images. I mean, just look at the images that I took today. I think they're great, I think they're fantastic. And I mean, sharpness wise, I feel confident blowing it up to something like a 20x30 without issue. So I wouldn't really worry about those issues too much, but those are just some things that I noticed. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is not the full review of this lens, so make sure you're subscribed for when that review comes. I'm thinking that's probably gonna come out in the next month or so. I want to get at least 2 to 3 more shoots in before I make my full conclusive review and give you my full thoughts and opinions on this lens. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to rate, comment, subscribe down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.